Welcome back. It is Saturday, which means we are tackling the running back tier list for week 10 of fantasy football, going through everything from bye weeks to injuries to usage trends, my top 36 overall running back rankings to help you guys win your fantasy football matchups. So let's start, as we always do, by breaking down the bye weeks. A couple running backs that are big names that you will not be able to use this week: Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker, Nick Chubb, Charbonnet, Madison, Zamir White, and Jerome Ford, all on bye this week. We got 4 teams on bye, which means we're going to have a little bit of a depleted running back kind of depth chart on your fantasy football rosters. We also have a couple of injuries, one major name, and then a couple of minor things to talk about. Brian Robinson Jr. of the Washington Commanders, the major injury for the week. Not a whole lot of injuries at the running back position in general, but Brian Robinson Jr. has been ruled out with a hamstring injury, which means we're going to upgrade Austin Eckler in the rankings. We also do have a couple of minor injuries to talk about. Zach Moss was placed on IR, presumably to end his season. Not exactly sure on the details, but he did have a neck injury. The Bengals traded for Khalil Herbert on Tuesday when the trade deadline passed, so it looks like Chase Brown will be the lead back going forward, as we saw on Thursday night, and Khalil Herbert will start to mix in more and more as the weeks go along. Gus Edwards, running back of the Chargers, is returning from IR. Entering Sunday's game against the Titans, he is questionable with an ankle injury. Keaton Mitchell made his debut but did not get a touch for the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday night. He is coming off of season-ending ACL tear last season. This is the first game he's played all year. And speaking of season-ending ACL tears, of course, Hook'em Horns Jonathan Brooks making his debut for the Carolina Panthers in Germany on Sunday morning. We'll have to wait and see kind of what the touch distribution looks like. Of course, the Panthers did recently extend the current starter Chuba Hubbard, and it took Brooks a lot more time than we were all thinking to come back from the injury. So we'll have to wait and see kind of what happens there. But let's go through the running back tier list, starting with 1 through 12. As you guys know, every week I go through my top 12 running backs. You guys should know to start these guys, but we're breaking down kind of who has a good matchup, who has a bad matchup, who's going to be in a potentially high-scoring game environment. All of these top guys are going to be starters for you guys as far as who could overperform because they're in good matchups. We have Saquon Barkley versus the 29th ranked Dallas Cowboys run defense, Aaron Jones, 28th ranked Jacksonville Jaguars defense, Jonathan Taylor versus the Bills, Kyron Williams versus the Dolphins, Breece Hall versus the Cardinals, Devon Achane versus the Rams, and Bijan Robinson versus the Saints. All of those running backs, top 12 matchups for their position. They should all have pretty monster games. We could see a very high-scoring week of fantasy running backs in week 10. Some of the elite running backs that are in high-scoring game environments, so the over-under, according to Vegas, is high. Derrick Henry, of course, on Thursday night, 53-point over-under. Didn't have a monster game, but he did find the end zone because of how high-scoring that game was. Kyron Williams and Devon Achane both playing on Monday Night Football. That over-under is set at 50 right now, so both of those guys in high-scoring game environments. JT and James Cook both in the same game, 48-point over-under. Bijan Robinson and Alvin Kamara both in the same game, 46.5-point over-under. And then Breece Hall versus the Cardinals. That game has a 46-point over-under, and the Jets are, I believe, favored by 1 point as it currently stands. Elite running backs who might underperform this week, who are in bad matchups: Jahmyr Gibbs versus the first-ranked Houston Texans run defense, Alvin Kamara versus the Atlanta Falcons 7th-ranked defense, Derrick Henry, as we saw, kind of underperformed a little bit, versus the Cincinnati Bengals. They were a top 10 run defense entering the week. Joe Mixon versus the Lions run defense, also not a great matchup in that same game with Gibbs. And then James Cook versus the Colts. They're about league average, so not really a bad matchup. I just didn't really have anywhere else to stick him. Usually I like to highlight a guy or two from this tier to outline any kind of usage trends and buy lows and things of that nature. My RB2 on the week is Bijan Robinson against the Saints. You guys can see he has been a 20-plus point per game scorer since we talked about him as a trade target back in week 5. Definitely has come to fruition if you guys bought low on him. His usage sometimes fluctuates. We see Algier get in there for a number of carries at times, but always we see Bijan Robinson get there as a target-commanding running back, and in the red zone, he has been a lot better as of late, as has the Falcons' offense in general. It took a little bit of time, which was to be expected, but yet everybody panicked anyways. Devon Achane, my RB3 on the week. You guys can see since Tua Tagovailoa's injury, he has been pretty much brutal from weeks 3 to 7 when Tua was out of the lineup. But in the 4 games that Tua has played this year, and in week 2, he actually didn't even finish the whole game, he's literally been a top 2 or 3 running back in every single game this season, scoring well over 23 PPR points per game. Unbelievable production from Achane. If you guys have him down the stretch, he could absolutely win people leagues. There is not many running backs I would rather have than Devon Achane for the rest of the year. Breece Hall, 2 games in a row where he's been sub 10 PPR points. If people are panicked in your league right now, which I know they are in some cases because both of these games have actually come on prime time, so people saw them, loud and clear. Breece Hall, maybe not the same player anymore, whatever. People are worried about him for no reason. Go buy low on him, just as we talked about buying low on him back in week 5, and he had 2 20-point per game performances in a row. So those guys, ones I wanted to highlight. Let's get into the actual tier list, talking about the high-end RB2s, running backs 13 through running back 18. You guys can see them. Christian McCaffrey, Tyrone Tracy, Chase Brown, who already played, DeAndre Swift, Kareem Hunt, and J.K. Dobbins. Christian McCaffrey is the first guy up at running back 13. I can promise you he probably will not be ranked this low going forward, but they've been cautious with him to this point. He's been on the shelf for 2 months as basically just a surprise inactive back in week 1. We all remember it. Slow, methodical. He's been working his way back from the injury. He has not had any setbacks. Ian Rappaport of NFL Network hinted that he probably wouldn't be very limited once he actually makes his debut, basically saying that if they were going to ramp him up, they would have played him sooner, but because he's had all of this time to get back healthy and be back on the field after the bye week, it looks like they might give him his full workload right away. And I can tell you this for free, like I said, there's a very good chance he's never not in the top 12 running backs ever again for the rest of the year. Tampa Bay allows the 3rd most targets to the running back position, 2nd most yards to the running back position as a receiver, and the most touchdowns receiving to the running back position as well. So Christian McCaffrey, even if he's not a full status workhorse on the ground, he could do some real damage here through the passing game, and especially with Debo coming in questionable, Jawan Jennings coming in questionable, Ricky Pearsall, of course, still being a rookie, Brandon Ayuk out for the year. We could really see, once Christian McCaffrey's back on the field for this team, he beats his last season total. Last season, he had a 20% target share, an absurd target share for a running back. We might even see that number increase this season. So running back 14, the next guy that we're going to talk about here, Tyrone Tracy versus the Carolina Panthers on Sunday morning in Munich. 32nd ranked defense, so the easiest defense in the league for the fantasy running back position. It's official, man. Tyrone Tracy, your new workhorse in New York. He has won out the job over Devin Singletary 3 straight games. Over 60% of the snaps since Devin Singletary has returned. Maybe send out some offers in your league because he hasn't really had a couple, big performances. He had the big game on Sunday Night Football in Week 8, but in Week 7 and in Week 9, he wasn't quite up to snuff there. Carolina's run defense is a complete joke, and Tracy has had at least 17 opportunities in 4 of his last 5 games. Tyrone Tracy was the only one who sold last week's pick'em entry for us, posting just 1 reception when we needed 2.5 from him. But this week, we're going to take him on his rushing yards because he has been getting a lot of carries. Most sports books have his rushing yardage total set higher, 73.5, 74.5, and right now on Underdog, you can get it at 72.5, and minus 125 steam on most sports books are on the over right now. So getting good value on Tyrone Tracy higher than 72.5 rushing yards is something I feel really good about. And of course, we will be building out a full pick'em entry in this video. Running back 15 for me was Chase Brown. He locked into my running back 15 because he played on Thursday Night Football against the Baltimore Ravens. They were about league average against fantasy running backs, and he posted elite usage, 88% of the snaps, 23.5 PPR points. You love to see it. I mean, Chase Brown is definitely going to be a very, very big staple of this high-end RB2 and maybe even low-end RB1 range for the rest of the season, depending on how Khalil Herbert, gets up to speed and how he works into this backfield. Chase Brown could win people some leagues down the stretch. Running back 16 for me in my rankings is DeAndre Swift going up against the New England Patriots, 24th ranked adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position defense. Since week 4, DeAndre Swift has been a 20.5 PPR point per game score. He has been uber consistent, churning out at least 18 opportunities per game since week 4. He's been over 100 total yards in 4 of his last 5 games. He scored a touchdown in 4 of his last 5 games as well. This week, he poses a solid matchup against the Patriots, who are not that good against the run. It's a great game script for the Bears because they are actually favored in this game, and the Bears offense desperately needs to get back on track throwing the ball because Caleb has not been great as of late. DJ Moore's been disappointing. Rome Odunze had 100 yards last week, but the passing offense hasn't been great, and Swift has still been performing at a high level. I love DeAndre Swift to catch some passes this week. He would have gone higher than this 16.5 receiving yardage total in every game this season except for 2. So he has been very involved in the passing game, and he averages 3.5 targets per game to get this one done. So I like him to go higher than 16.5 receiving yards in this one against the Patriots. Running back 17 for me is Kareem Hunt versus the Denver Broncos 17th ranked run defense this week for the Chiefs. They are more than a touchdown favorite. They're 8-point favorites right now. They haven't been consistently covering those big, spreads. Like as we saw on Monday night, the Buccaneers actually covered the spread when they pushed it to overtime and actually had a chance to win that game against the Kansas City Chiefs. But the Chiefs just have this uncanny ability of closing it out in the fourth quarter, winning the game when it matters the most. Kareem Hunt has an absurd 21 carries or more in every game that he has been the starter so far this year. He is just churning out yardage, churning out fantasy production. His rush attempt total on Underdog right now is 18.5, and honestly, I think he will very easily exceed this total because if the Chiefs do get up to a big lead against the Broncos this week, this one's going to be one of the freest cash of all time. So I like him to go higher than 18.5 rushing attempts, and that will actually conclude this Underdog fantasy entry. Got it out of the way right off the bat. So if you want to tail the Kareem Hunt, DeAndre Swift, Tyrone Tracy picks, head on over to UnderdogFantasy.com or click the link down below in the pinned comment. Use the promo code FSE when you sign up. And you make a deposit, you'll also get up to $1,000 in bonus cash. You'll get this CJ Stroud free square that you can add into this entry if all of these picks hit. And you add in that CJ Stroud free square, you could win up to 10x your original money. And make sure to use promo code FSE when you sign up. And of course, when you sign up, you'll also get our weekly rankings manifesto for free for using our promo code. Once you make a play on the site, you'll get that sent to your email inbox within 24 hours. So if you're getting into crunch time of your fantasy football league, you need to get those start-sit decisions right, get that Vegas information, the matchup information. All of that is available in our weekly rankings manifesto, which is free if you sign up over on Underdog using code FSE. Link down below in the pinned comment. So running back 18 for me, J.K. Dobbins versus the Tennessee Titans. I can stop victory lapping J.K. Dobbins every single week because obviously he's been great this season, but we will probably see Gus Edwards return from his ankle injury, as I talked about at the top of the show. During that stretch that J.K. Dobbins had no Gus Edwards in the backfield, he has been absolutely outstanding as far as a workload is concerned. He's been dominating touches, and the Chargers have also been a lot better as an offense. We've seen Justin Herbert play a lot better for 4 games now. He's averaged over 240 passing yards per game, and he's thrown 5 touchdowns over the last 4 games as well. All great news for the running game because J.K. Dobbins having a competent quarterback to, work off of play action and be the primary focus of defenses. I'm sure people are more worried about Herbert than they are of Dobbins. So that's great news for the running game. Opens up red zone opportunities, so on and so forth. 7 straight games for Dobbins, over 17 opportunities. Going back to week 1 is the only game that he did not have 17 opportunities or more in. His receiving role also the last 3 weeks has grown. On the season, his best 3 receiving games from a target standpoint, from a yardage standpoint, have all come 3 of his last 5 games. So the receiving marks are actually getting a little bit better for Dobbins. I've always known he was a great receiver. He's never really had the opportunity to show that, and it looks like we're starting to see that in the last couple of games. So moving into the low-end RB2s, the next tier of guys here, James Conner, Chuba Hubbard, Austin Eckler, David Montgomery, Ramondre Stevenson, and Tony Pollard. James Conner, the first guy here, versus the New York Jets. He is entering this game dealing with a finger injury, which, again, I don't think it's going to be a huge deal, but please make sure that Trey Benson is rostered in your league. We're getting to that time of the year where the old plow horse running back like James Conner starts to feel it in the horseshoes a little bit, and he's starting to deal with, nagging injuries, and we know he's never finished a full season, so keep that in mind with James Conner. Maybe you want to sell high on him, or at the very least, make sure you're stashing Trey Benson. Jets are a run funnel defense, so if you're looking for a positive in this matchup, the Jets are probably going to be difficult to pass the ball against, but they'll probably be good on the ground using James Conner. I expect a very heavy dose of number 6 for the Arizona Cardinals. James Conner has 19 opportunities or more in every game except for 2 this season, so they're definitely going to use him a ton in this one, which is why I have him as a top 20 play. Chuba Hubbard, my RB20. Of course, Jonathan Brooks is making his season debut. The Giants are 21st against fantasy running backs. This game is in Germany, fresh off of a big 4-year, $33.2 million contract extension for Chuba Hubbard. Shout out to my fellow Canadian hoser here getting the bag from the NFL. The Giants defense allows 100 or more rushing yards to the running back position this season per game, and they are also 5th most receiving yardage to running back position as well. So I think Chuba Hubbard and Jonathan Brooks have a lot of, leeway to be able to have a good game this week. I can't imagine Brooks will get more than like 5 to 10 touches in his first game back, especially they have a bye after this game, so they're probably going to get his feet wet, go into the bye, and then maybe we'll see a bigger workload split come week 12. You should be safe to start Chuba Hubbard for one more week as a top 20 play. And then we'll kind of reevaluate after this week based on what we saw and how Jonathan Brooks looked and all that kind of stuff. But regardless, I think Chuba Hubbard is going to be more valuable rest of the season than we initially anticipated. At first, we were like, okay, 4 or 5 games in, coming into the year, Chuba Hubbard's going to be a great play. But then once Jonathan Brooks gets back in there, he's going to be a workhorse, man. They're top 50 drafted running back. Chuba Hubbard's going to be a handcuff after that. That's not been the case so far. He's been so good that they rewarded him with an extension. It's probably going to be a 50-50 backfield for a while, at least for the next couple of years by the looks of it. So running back 21 for me is Austin Eckler going up against the 20th ranked Pittsburgh Steelers. No Brian Robinson yet again this week. Austin Eckler has only crossed 52 rushing yards once this year and has not gotten more than 11 carries. Despite Brian Robinson being banged up and missing a couple of games, they just don't want to give him a huge workload on the ground. With Austin Eckler, you guys probably know this from his Chargers days, he's not the greatest runner of the ball in the league. He is a touchdown scorer and he is a receiving work type of guy. And against Pittsburgh, that's definitely going to play because you'd rather run the ball against them or throw to your running backs against them versus this defense and try and drop back and, beat their secondary or deal with their pass rush. I think Eckler is probably going to catch quite a few dump offs in this game, which is why I like him as a top 21 running back play on the week. Running back 22 for me is David Montgomery, a little lower than he normally is ranked for me, but it's because the Houston Texans have the first ranked run defense, and specifically against running backs like David Montgomery. I continue to say this about the Lions backfield. They're not stupid. They can scout their opponents really well, know what their opponents do really well, and they're going to realize that the better running back to beat this defense is Jahmyr Gibbs. And they've gone back and forth all season long. Some games that David Montgomery is hot, they feed him the rock. Some games it's Jahmyr Gibbs that's hot, they feed him the rock. These guys have differing skill sets, and the skill set that will play against the Texans defense is Jahmyr Gibbs' skill set. So that's why I have David Montgomery ranked a little bit lower. Some weeks profile is Gibbs weeks, some weeks profile is Montgomery weeks. Tough run defense up the middle. It doesn't look like it's going to be a great matchup for David Montgomery, but last week we just saw him have wet conditions, a beatable up the middle run defense versus the Packers. That is why Montgomery outsnapped Gibbs last week. Fire up both of them, but just keep in mind that David Montgomery might be the weaker play, like I said, which is why he's down at RB22 for me. Running back 23 for me in my rankings is Ramondre Stevenson versus the 13th ranked Chicago Bears. 3 of his last 4 games, he has been a top 8 running back on the week, which is great production for Ramondre Stevenson. Drake May has reinvigorated this offense. They've been consistent, crossing 290 or more total yards in every game that Drake May has started and finished, because of course he left early versus the Jets. Ramondre Stevenson in the last 2 weeks has regained control of the starting job. The usage has been excellent after the whole Antonio Gibson debacle where Stevenson was fumbling. Gibson was just not reliable enough to command the workload. If he had somebody like Devin Singletary behind him on the depth chart, it might have been curtains on Ramondre Stevenson workhorse season, because you give a reliable backup running back like Devin Singletary the ball, he's not going to fumble, he's going to get what's there. And Gibson is just like Ramondre. He's unreliable, only he's a worse player. So tough matchup, but this game should remain close for him. I bet Drake May has something to say about the Chicago Bears taking Caleb Williams over him as well. So this is going to be an interesting matchup between 2 of the top 3 picks in the NFL draft at quarterback. And I think Ramondre Stevenson could have a sneaky good game in what projects to be a pretty bad matchup. Running back 24 for me closing out this range is Tony Pollard against the 3rd ranked Los Angeles Chargers. Not a very good matchup here. Pollard is off the injury report, though, and he is ready to go. After failing to practice all of last week, he comes in, plays anyways in week 9, and goes for a top 12 week, posting 18.4 PPR points. So that was very impressive. However, Tajay Spears is coming back, and I also can't exaggerate any further that if Tony Pollard was playing this well on the Cowboys last year, he would have literally won people leagues, and it's really unfortunate he was banged up last season. 3 straight games of over 80% of the snaps. That might be in jeopardy. Like I said, Tajay Spears expected to come back after a 3-game absence with that hamstring pull. I expect Tony Pollard to go back down probably to like the 60 to 65% snap share range. This game seems kind of gross, and it seems like a bad matchup. The over-under is like 38 points. But low-key, the Titans and the Chargers have been more exciting than people want to give them credit for, especially Levis is coming back this week. He's more exciting than Rudolph. Both running backs are now healthy for the Titans, and the Chargers are actually throwing the ball a little bit more up-tempo as well, and Dobbins is playing well. So this game's kind of gross, but it's a little bit more interesting than people might think. So that closes out the low-end RB2s tier. Let's get into the flex plays here, starting with running back 25, Rachaad White going up against the San Francisco 49ers. Baker Mayfield has passed the ball 81 times the last 2 games. Without Mike Evans, without Chris Godwin, 42 of those passes have been to the running backs, or they've been to Cade Otton. They've been running this offense through those guys. Jalen McMillan coming in as a true game time decision yet again. Sterling Shepard is Sterling Shepard at this point in their career. So I think we're going to see a lot more of the running back and tight end usage. This offense has been forced to adapt. One more game left until Mike Evans is going to probably come back in week 12 after their bye in week 11. White is due for yet another big receiving day, and for all the shit he gets as a runner, he's actually averaged 5.5 yards per carry since the week 4 win versus the Eagles. He's actually been running a lot better as of late. And of course, we know Bucky Irving is good too, and I'll talk about him in a second. This is the offense. Liam Cohen is in his bag. He's getting creative with these running backs, getting creative with K. Doughton, and White's been outstanding catching the ball. He's got 15 targets over his last 3 games, 125 yards, 3 receiving touchdowns as well. So White, yeah, he's probably only going to get 5 to 8 carries or something like that, but the receiving work is what's really going to help him get there from a PPR standpoint. You guys can see the last couple of games, top 24 running back in 3 straight games, over 9 PPR points per game in 5 straight games. So he's been relatively consistent, relatively, stable, not the type of guy that you really have to worry about putting up a stinker in your lineup because of the receiving floor that he has. So good news for him. He's going to have more receiving production in this game. Running back 26 for me is Najee Harris versus the Washington Commanders, 7th ranked run defense. Still chance to sell Najee Harris, as we've talked about on numerous occasions. 3 straight games before the bye, over 16 PPR points. He's the type of guy that when he's not performing, he's impossible to sell, but when he is performing, some of your league mates might buy into the volume and buy into the player. This matchup does not bode well for him. The Steelers are in a much better situation to pass the ball against Washington's defense. It doesn't look like Marshawn Lattimore is going to make his debut for the team yet. And in week 10, I don't expect the running game to be very, very productive. I think Russell Wilson and George Pickens and Freiermuth are going to have to be the ones that win this game for the Steelers if they win this game against the Commanders. So not a great matchup for Najee. Like I said, maybe try and sell high on him before this game happens. Running back 27 in my rankings, Raheem Mostert, 80 total yards last week, 11 opportunities in 3 straight games. The Dolphins of old, which is what we saw last year, the elite run game, Mostert and Achane, they've been coming out the last 2 games, and it's starting to show itself in the box score. Achane has been literally elite, like I said, anytime Tua's been healthy, and Mostert has actually been usable the last couple of games before he was completely useless. So definitely fire him up if you guys need a flex option. I think he's a good one. Running back 28 for me is Bucky Irving. Everything I said for Rachaad White is pretty much true of Bucky Irving as well. He has gotten 10 to 16 touches in every single game this year. He's explosive. He's electric. He's extremely efficient, averaging 5 yards per carry on the season, 7.6 yards per reception. The run game has got to work against San Francisco if they want a chance to win this game. They're at home. There's a chance they could upset them. If they win this game, they'll be 5-5. As a Bucs fan, I would love to see that. And then going into their bye, getting Mike Evans back for a very easy stretch of games. If you guys are curious how easy the Buccaneers schedule is down the stretch, other than the Chargers, they play the Panthers twice, the Giants, it's really easy, man. They still got the Saints one more time too. Very easy schedule down the stretch for the rest of the season. So if you want to buy low potentially on either of these running backs or Mike Evans, I think it definitely makes sense to do so. Running back 29 for me in my rankings is Rico Dowdle versus the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't really love Rico this week. I know Danny talked him up yesterday in the Sneaky Starts video. I like the workload that I saw back in week 9 against the Falcons, but there's no Dak. There's Cooper Rush starting at quarterback. It's a top 12 run defense versus Philadelphia. I don't love Rico Dowdle this week. It sounds like a disappointing high-end RB3 waiting to happen. Maybe I'll be wrong, but the efficiency increase we've seen from Rico Dowdle has been climbing the last 3 games, and I just don't think that happens. They're going to be focused on stopping the run. They're going to let Cooper Rush beat them if Cooper Rush can beat them, which I don't think he can. So I think that's probably what's going to end up happening in that Cowboys game at 4:25 on Sunday. Running back 30 for me is Travis Etienne. Etienne came back and had a ramp-up game in week 9 where he only played 31% of the snaps. Tank Bigsby still carried the ball more than him, still played more snaps more than him. In week 10, I expect it to be a Travis Etienne game because I expect the Vikings to be winning this game handedly. I don't think that they're going to let Jacksonville make this close at all. With Mac Jones starting at quarterback, I think that the Vikings are going to light the Jaguars defense up, and I think there's a chance that Travis Etienne catches a number of checkdowns in this game, which is why I like him over Tank Bigsby. So getting into the deep league flex plays, I'll just rattle these off real quick. Running back 31 for me is Javonte Williams, 3.8 yards per carry on the year. 15 to 18 touches a game is nice, but against one of the best run defenses in the NFL, enjoy your 9.5 fantasy points that Javonte is going to get you. Even if he scores a touchdown, which is definitely not likely because he hasn't really scored that much, He's definitely not a must start in this game because I think the Chiefs will be playing from behind. Running back 32 for me is Jaylen Warren. Again, like I said, for Najee, it's not a good matchup, but Jaylen Warren, another week of rest. If you're looking for a high upside running back trade target who is a handcuff with a standalone role, I do think Jaylen Warren is a decent option. Running back 33 for me is Ray Davis, who I am actually, unfortunately, forced to start in the Flock League, as I talked about on Thursday's live stream. The reason he's a decent start, high over-under, Bills implied for 26 points. They're 4-point favorites. We've seen Ray Davis perform in 3 of his last 4 games as a top 20 running back, even despite James Cook being active and playing in 2 of those games. I have to start him in the Flock League. Madison's on bye. My team being absolutely awful at RB2. If only I didn't trade away Kareem Hunt and Bucky Irving in that trade to go get Brandon Ayuk, who then tore his ACL. That trade is looking like it's the death of me in the Flock League, because if I had gotten a wide receiver 1 in that trade, you could probably justify it, but giving away Amari Cooper, JSN, Kareem Hunt, and Bucky Irving for a guy who ended up tearing his ACL, not looking good so far for your boy in the Flock League. But we'll battle. We'll see if Ray Davis can get me there. Running back 34, Tyler Algier, his usual 12 to 15 carries when the Falcons are winning might be in order, because I think the Saints are bad as hell. Chris Olave is going to be out for this game. Not a good option for this week, really, is any New Orleans Saints. So I think that Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson should be able to control this one. Running back 35, Tank Bigsby, again, he got solid usage last week, but I think it'll be an ETN game. Running back 36, Jordan Mason, he might still have a role, but I think Christian McCaffrey is going to take over this backfield pretty quickly. So I'm not overly excited about starting Jordan Mason. So that is the end of the running back tier list. Hopefully I helped you set your lineups. It should go without saying, but if I had somebody ranked like RB13 and RB20, you should start the guy who is ranked RB13. If you have any other questions down below in the comments, I'll try and get to as many as I can. If you want to tail our pick'em entry, like I said, Tracy, Swift, and Hunt is what we're rolling with. If you guys want to tail it, link down below in the pinned comment to sign up over on Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code FSE when you sign up. $1,000 in bonus cash on your first deposit. When you make a deposit and to play on the site, you get our weekly start set rankings for free, and you also get a new customer CJ Stroud bonus free square that you can add into this entry, and if all of them hit, it is a 10x of your original money. Get some skin in the game. Head on over to Underdog. Really appreciate the support for the show that you guys have shown us this year over there. But yeah, appreciate you guys for sticking around. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. Peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.